Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to tellers from across the world. This is Chennai Storytelling Festival, the 14th edition. And here in week 4, we are having the first storytelling for adults, which is in fact the 10th among 14 such sessions. We have tellers joining us from the USA, Germany, mainly the USA and Germany, and of course, we have lots of Indian tellers and tellers from Canada. I can see Selena there and a few others. So, warm welcome once again to everybody. Today's session, we are going to kickstart with a teller from Germany. Let me just spotlight you, Momo. Heiss is joining us from Germany, and she's going to share a folk tale with us. Momo, tell a little bit about your work, a little bit of yourself, and share a story with us.
I am very happy to be part of this festival. I'm Momo Heiss from Germany, from Munich, and I'm a musician and a storyteller. So I came from music into storytelling, and I'm always a little bit. You might have to help me if a word doesn't come to my mind, because if German comes into the way, I'm lost in English. But since we are all together storytellers, you can help me out, I guess. And I'm going to share a story of Mother Hulda, which is maybe you know her from the Grimm story. I don't know. Maybe you can also. Does anybody know Mother Hulda stories? Because probably a lot of storytellers around. Yeah, probably one of the Mother Hulda stories you know is the one of it's Goldmarie and Pechmarie, which would be Gold Mary and Pitch Mary. I don't know. And you know the Mother Hulda putting out her cushion and doing like this, and then it will snow instead of feathers going down and down. It will be snowing on Earth. That's the most famous picture we know of Mother Hulda, even here in Germany. And a lot of people, even in Germany, don't really know that there are a lot of legends about Mother Hulda. Mother Hulda is like a mythological figure that was here before Christianity, and there are a lot of legends around her being around. Here in my place in Munich or in the mountains, Mother Hulda will come in the winter very dark with a storm, and she's very like she's going to rip off stuff you have to hide inside. And the more you come to the north, Mother Hulda will be much more softer in the winter because she's there for weather, making weather. She's going to be in spring, bringing up the life. She will meet us in the summer as the goddess of love, and she will take all the souls in the winter time to hide them and hold them in the winter. So in the middle of German speaking, like in the middle of Germany, more in the north than where I live, she will come as a motherly figure with a big dress or skirt. And she will be followed by little souls, which are the little children that died the year before and the year before. And she will come with those little children. They will look through the windows and see if this would be a nice place to come on Earth, be a child again. So she will go like this through the landscape. And people would do something like that in the Mother Hulda night at the 6th of January. They will make a table and put some cloth on it and put very delicious food on it. So Mother Hulda can come with her little souls, and she will eat, and she can bless the space and the house and the crops and the animals. So this is a story about Mother Hulda coming at the 6th of January, and I'm going to start it with a little song. Maybe, I hope you're all muted, because I'm going to change this for the music stuff I'm doing in between. So this is a little self-made flute. When I made it, I was looking at the ground, looking at the flowers, and I always feel the flowers when I play it. So I'm going to start with this one. Well, there was a big house, and in this house there was a family and a very old grandmother, and they had a maiden, and this maiden was asked to go outside, put the table outside, put the cloth around the table and the delicious food on it because it was 6th of January, and Mother Hulda should come. But this maiden, she did all of that, but she was like, oh, this is only old stories. Nobody believes in Mother Hulda. It's just one thing we just do, and she's not really coming and blessing everything. It's just a story. But she did it because it was her job. But when the night fell down, and the stars were in the sky, she went outside and she wanted to spy, to see her. She knew that everybody said, never, never spy on Mother Hulda. You should go inside. It's sacred. It's a sacred time outside. Nobody goes outside in the night of 6th of January. But she was like, young girls, young women sometimes are. She wanted to know. So she went outside in a little cottage, and there was a little space between the woods, and she could spy outside. And it was a very, very still night. And nothing happened. There was this beautiful table with all the delicious food on it, and the stars and the moon, they shine on the snow, and the snow was sparkling a little bit. She was getting a little tired, but then in the stillness she heard something. She heard a little song. It was coming from way up far, and then she saw a light. And this light was coming from a beautiful, beautiful woman with a big dress. And she was coming nearer and nearer. And after her, there were the little souls accompanying her and going with her. And she was looking like this, through this wood. Mother Hulda was coming, and she was coming very near to the table. And she would go to the table, and she would try a little bit of the food. And she was blessing the house, and blessing the people, and blessing the animals, and blessing the crops. And the little souls, they were jumping on the table and trying and looking through the window. And it was so beautiful to see. All were summing a little song, and the maiden was looking outside. But then Mother Hulda stopped everything. Oh, stop. I see that there are 2 lights too much. And she told one of the little souls, blow them out. And the little soul was doing, and it was dark. The maiden couldn't see anything anymore. She couldn't see the Mother Hulda. She couldn't see the souls. She just heard the little song. They were singing while they were vanishing on the other side. And she heard the music, but it was dark. She tried to get out of the cottage, and she found the door, and she got out of the cottage, and she couldn't see the stars, and she couldn't see the snow. So she went her way to the big house with the family where she was working, and she couldn't find the door. She could just find it with her hands. So she opened the door, and then she heard it. The fire, it was doing. The fireplace was on, and it was warm, and it was, but she couldn't see anything. She was blind. The 2 lights that were blown out, it was her eyes. And the old grandmother said, you shouldn't have gone outside. Everybody was telling you this is a sacred time. But come on, I'm going to tell you a story. But the girl, she was so sad. She had all her life before herself, and she couldn't see a thing. So she listened to the stories. It was a very dark winter, and it was cold. And she began to help, she could help a little bit, chopping the things for eating, and helping finding something. And she heard another more of the stories of the old woman. And you know that stories can light up your heart. And it did a little bit. Every story lit up her heart a little bit more. And she became more, how do you tell, like you got better with her hands, and she could organize herself in the house. And everybody was like, oh, she's not seeing anything, but she can help. And then the spring comes like we have now. And she went outside and she heard the little birds singing, and she was hearing so much more than before. And she was feeling the flowers coming out of the ground, and she was feeling the ground, and she was feeling so much more. And she was getting happier and happier. And when the summer was there, she was a happy girl. Some people said she was even happier than before. She was hearing, smelling, and touching the things. She felt the Mother Holder making the whole life of the year beautiful and strong. She heard the stories of the old grandmother, and she was so content. So people said, "Oh, do you know the house where the maiden, the blind maiden is? She is such a happy girl," and she was. So some people said she could also listen so good to the flowers and to the animals that they could hear them speak. But maybe she just felt them, I don't know. Well, the year went past. Everybody liked the maiden. The maiden was as happy as before, with all her stories in her heart. And then the winter fell, and it was getting dark and dark, and the longest night went away, and then there was the 6th of January, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to make the table for Mother Hulda." She was doing everything. Nobody had to say anything. And then the old lady came and said, "Well, I had a dream this night. Mother Hulda was coming into my dream. You should stay outside. You're allowed to. Go into the cabin where you lost your eyesight." And she went outside and she sat in her cabin. And she didn't see anything, but she heard Mother Hulda coming. She felt her blessing. She felt the little souls and their bright and wonderful energy. And then it was still. And Mother Hulda said, "Oh, wasn't this the place where you blew off the 2 lights? I feel that another light has emerged from inside, this one in the heart. Since we can feel that, we can give back the 2 lights." And then she saw out of this Mother Hulda and the beautiful souls. They were just taking some more of the delicious food, and then they were vanishing in the landscape. And then she went back with her 3 lights lit up. And that was my story of Mother Hulda.
Thank you, Momo. That is such a beautiful, beautiful story.
Thank you.
I mean, I love the warm telling and the warm story as well. Very beautifully shared.
So, to lead on the conversation, I would be happy to know if you knew the story and if you have something that kind of came to your mind and maybe connect to some other stories, or like a magic moment you had with the story. So if you want to share, I'm happy to hear.
Yes, thank you for that wonderful telling. I did a PhD in folklore. And one of the things we were taught at University of Pennsylvania was that many of the classic fairy tales, including the Mother Hulda stories, really are derived from stories about goddesses. Because in Europe and Scandinavia and the Slavic countries, people were worshiping local goddesses and gods until Christianity was implemented. And when Christianity was implemented, suddenly the temple for the goddess and the worshiping of the goddess was a criminal act. It was against the law, and people were accused of being witches if they worshipped goddesses. But what happened spontaneously, without any organization, is that a lot of the stories about goddesses were recycled into fairy tales, where they were not a threat to the dominant religion.
Yes.
So it seems the Mother Hulda stories are especially along this line. And the real giveaway is that motif you mentioned at the beginning, where when you fluff her pillows or her mattress, snowflakes come down into the world.
Yes.
If you fluff a mattress, a pillow, goose feathers will come out. But in this folklore, they turn into snowflakes. So obviously, she's not an ordinary human. If snowflakes are coming out of her mattress and going down to the world, she's obviously more than that. There's at least one Mother Hulda story in the Grimm Brothers collection.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one where you can see the snowflakes. That's the picture that you, as a child, know. Mother Hulda is the one with the. It's like a saying, but it's the only, almost the only fairy tale people still know from Mother Hulda. So they miss that in the old stories, in that folk tale, it's about a weather goddess, because if she also learns to cook. And it doesn't say in the Grimm stories that this is like making rain or making the red, the sun going down and you see everything red. That's the fire of the. So everything has this equivalence to weather making or just being this goddess of earth
The
goddess.
one that I know from the Grimm brothers is they're two sisters.
Yeah,
A
that's
good
the one.
a good one and the bad one. And the good one, she comes to Mother Hulda's hut in the forest, and she cleans and she cooks and she's very polite. And after some time, Mother says, "Okay, you can go home now." And when the girl leaves the hut, gold flakes come down on her. And she goes home and says, "Oh, mother, mother, look, I have all this gold." So then her older sister, who is mean, says, "I'm going to go and get more." But the older sister is rude, and then when it comes time for her to leave the mother Hulda, the girl says, "I want to get my reward." But what happens is that mean girl goes out and instead of gold, snakes fall on her, or
Oh,
lizard.
it's pitch with us. It's the
Yeah,
black
pitch,
pitch.
dirt, snakes, lizards, all sorts of things that you don't want to have fall on you. And she
Yeah.
goes home, and at least in one translation I have, it says, and she tried to wash off all that dirt from her, but they're still trying to wash it off today. It's still
So
there
this
today.
is the very, very famous story everybody knows, and it's taken by the Grimms. So it feels like they make it very like you have to be following the rules and stuff like that. That's more the mental thing that is behind the time it was written down by Grimm. But if you go into the story, because I made a whole thing about, I have a whole research program about that, and I did a lot of research on that. So on one hand, you have this karma thing, and if you go more deeper inside, it's about the Gold Mary, the one who does everything right, everything what Mother Hulda says. She doesn't only do everything right, but she feels the urgency of apples having to be
Yeah.
pulled. She feels the bread, like she feels this trans like this other now my German gets me in the way. So she feels that it's not about household. She feels it's about weather. She really understands that this is a goddess. And the other girl, she just wants to have this golden skirt. And she's gonna do what she says. So it's a little bit more like it's a focus. If you tell it with a little bit of another focus and about with this sense of what was Mother Hulda for the people, like a goddess, everything changed. It changes a little bit of the taste of the story.
Yes, yes.
Go deep.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
the good sister, I mean, she has good character. She has a good nature. She has good morality. She's generous, she's kind, she's gentle. Whereas the older sister is the opposite. She's greedy, she's self-centered. And what happens, and I guess it's a classic fairy tale pattern, is that the good characters get good things, physical good things, and the including beauty, whereas the bad characters get negative physical things around them. And the Mother Holder character, as a sort of goddess figure, she facilitates this reward and punishment of external manifestations of the character of the character, coming to her physically.
So I'm gonna go back to the group because so everybody can join in again. So maybe did you have anything to the story I told that you want to share? Moira.
No, I don't know much about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Moira.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know who. And
Go ahead,
anyway,
Moira. Go ahead.
I mean, Momo and I could also meet in person. She's about 15 minutes by the subway from where I live. But Momo, first of all, it was very interesting. I learned a lot of German about ancient traditions that I didn't know. And I find it much more interesting to have this ambiguity of the Mother Hulda figure than just she punishes the bad and makes the good rich, and that's the whole story. And what I found particularly touching was the development within the girl and the way you accompanied it with the music. It was just, it melted into one thing, and it gave it a depth that I rarely hear that way in traditional stories. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Moira.
Moira, I knew very. I mean, I did not know this story at all because I don't know that much of folklore. Forgive me, my voice is a little bad today. Anyway, I loved your narration of the story, particularly the awakening of the senses in the girl, till it touched her heart. And of course, your sound effects, the crackling of the fire and all that, very good. The music. Thank you so much. I learned a lot in this.
Thank you.
True, as Bertha was mentioning, it was beautiful to see how the girl grows or matures internally. So it's not just about her eyesight is gone, but there's so much more still within her which develops and grows and matures, and that was very beautifully brought across.
Thank you. So Eric, I probably my time is running out. Is it true?
You can take a couple of more minutes, Momo, if you wish to.
I think I'm fine.
Okay.
I really love to tell the story. It's very near to my heart because I did so much research on Mother Holder, and it was a very nice experience to tell in English again because I had a long time of being very anxious about telling in English. So I had a nice time with you today. I'm very happy to have been part. Thank you.
You did a great job of telling it in English.
Thank you.
Yes, Momo. I mean, I was hoping a little bit of German will drop in so we can learn a little bit of German, but that didn't happen.
I have one very funny story where I begin it. It begins with so this is a funny German word, and I did it in Romania, where it begins. It's not a big sea. It's not a lake. It's not a pond. It's even smaller. You know, this very small thing you can find on your way. How does it? Is it what's the English word? Does anybody know the one you just find on your
Puddle?
puddle?
Pond?
Yeah,
Puddle.
Yeah.
Puddle. I think that one, the Pfütze, German word Pfütze, and I love the word Pfütze because it's exactly the sound your shoe makes if you go into the water.
True, yeah.
So I made everybody in Romania say before I told the story, which began in this Pfütze, if they can say Pfütze. So that's a
Putze, is that right? Putze.
Pfütze, yeah. Pütze. Yeah, it begins with a
Pütze.
P.
Okay.
Pütze.
I'm going to keep practicing that now while we bring in our next teller.
Okay.
Thank you once again, Momo, for the very, very
Thank
warm
you.
story and wonderful telling itself.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be part.
We are moving on to our second teller for the day. Let me spotlight Lynn Ford. Lynn Ford is joining us from Ohio, USA, and she's going to be sharing yet another folktale with us. Lynn, please talk a little bit about yourself, work that you do, and share a story with us.
Thank you. Thank you. And hello to everyone, whether it's morning or evening where you are. I have a very deep voice today because I have managed to catch a little cold. As the sun came out here in Ohio in the United States, obviously it was time to catch the sniffles rather than in the wintertime when I could be bundled inside and stay inside. I have been a storyteller, according to my mother, since I was 3 years old. At that time, the stories were often called lies. And I was very good at telling them, but of course, no one believed them. The story that I'm going to share came to me from my father, whose heritage included Cherokee and Choctaw. I come from a Black Appalachian or Afro-Latin family with people from diverse cultures. And no one told me the roots of the stories when I was a little girl, but they would share the stories with me. And as I grew older and much more curious about them, I did my own research. You can find, I will say, a variant of this story in a collection by James Mooney that came out around 1900, I believe. History, Myths, and Sacred Formulas of the Cherokee. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that preserves the story in one way. If you go to various families, just like anywhere else, the families will have different versions of the same story. So what you will hear from me is not what you will find in the book. This is from my father, who would begin the story with words that I've discovered were somewhat traditional. This is a story my father told me when I was just a child. If you hear that, you know that it's probably a folk tale, a fiction. Long ago, when the world was still new and things had not quite settled into the way they would one day be, everything, everyone had power. Little powers, great powers, powers all over the world. And the animals would gather together in council circles, just like the two-legs. They would gather to talk about what might need to be changed or what might need to be done or how they could do things better. There might be arguments in the council circle, but they were gentle arguments, if you understand. People discussing things, animals discussing things. But there was one who was not invited to the council circle, and that one was Grandfather Mole. No one believed that Mole had any powers whatsoever. He was small. To some, he was very ugly. He had little beady eyes. And he liked the dark more than he liked the light. And he had never shown any kind of power, any kind of magic. And so they did not think he had any. And so they shooed him away from the council circle. He just didn't seem to belong. And you know how that might make one feel. Grandfather Mole walked away, eyes squinting in the bright light of day. He made his way to a great rock that sat beside the path. And there he sat in the shade. He thought he would wait until the sun went down to make his way to his hole in the ground. But as he sat there, along came a young man, and the young man sat right on that rock, and the young man sighed and sighed. Oh. Now, Grandfather Mole could hear that, and he knew something was wrong with this young man. Then Grandfather Mole heard other footfall and along came a young woman, and Mo could see that she was carrying a basket for gathering berries in the woods. She walked toward that young man, and then she stopped in front of him, and she smiled, as if she waited for him to say something. And the young man inhaled, took a deep breath as if to speak, and he said, and the young woman just shook her head and walked into the woods. Now, Grandfather Mole could not resist asking a question. He came from where he was, came to where the young man could see him, and he said to him, "Child, what was that noise that came out of your face? What is wrong with you?" The young man said, "Oh, Grandfather Mole, I am in love, and I want to talk to her. I want to ask to walk through the woods with her, to help her pick berries so that we could get better acquainted and perhaps we could eventually get married. But every time I see her, my heart beats like 1,000 drums and my ears plug up. I cannot hear. I cannot think. I try to say something and some stupid laugh comes out of my mouth. I don't know what to do. If I keep doing this, she's not even going to look at me anymore." Well, Grandfather Mole took pity on the young man and he said, "Don't worry. I have a power no one seems to notice, but I can make a change in this. Tonight, as you sleep, I will come to you. I will come to her. And in the morning, things will have changed." Well, eventually the sun went down. That young man went to his home and went to sleep. The young woman went to her home and went to sleep. In the meantime, Grandfather Mole had been digging a tunnel, which came up in the young man's home and in the young woman's home. And when he heard the young man snoring, Grandfather Mole came up from the earth right beside that young man's bed, and he waved his little hands. The young man's chest opened without blood, without pain, and Mole took a piece of the young man's heart. Then quickly he went down into the ground. He made his way to the young woman's home. He came up beside her bed. He waved his little hands again, and her chest opened without any pain, without any blood. And he placed that piece of the young man's heart next to hers and took a piece of her heart. He waved his little hand and her chest closed. She never awakened. He went back down under the ground and Mole came up beside that young man, placed a piece of the young woman's heart beside the young man's, waved his little hands and the chest closed. There was no pain. The young man never awakened. Now in the morning, the sun rose and there was Grandfather Mole. He had not tried to go to the council circle. He felt there was no point. He was beside that great rock, waiting to see what might happen. And along came that young man who sat upon the rock and sighed and sighed. And along came that young woman carrying her basket for berries. And she walked toward the young man. And she felt as if something was missing inside herself. And the only place that she would find it was in that young man. So this time when she stopped and smiled demurely, she said, "Hello." And that was all it took for that young man, for he knew that there was something lost from himself, and she was the only one who could give it back to him. And so he said, "Hello." May I walk in the woods with you today? Oh, she smiled and nodded, and they walked into the woods together. Thus began their romance. And eventually, there was a marriage. At the wedding, some asked, how did this young man, who was so quiet, and this young woman, who was so shy, come together? How had that been made possible? And the young man said, I'm not sure how he did it, but it came from the power of Grandfather Mole. Well, the next time there was a council circle of animals, they asked Grandfather Mole to come, and he thought he had finally been accepted and was welcomed, but that was not the case. They asked him about his power, and when they found out what it was, some of them grew jealous. They said, we do not want to ever see you again, for you have a special power, a power that could change the world. That much power makes us angry. And so you must leave the council circle and never return, never join us. If you try, we will kill you. And so Grandfather Mole made his way back to his hole in the ground. And to this very day, the mole remains underground most of the time. You rarely see him above ground. But there are some who say that in the month of February, when hearts are placed on windows and doors, when hearts are given one to the other, it's said that there is some little fella who flutters around on small wings with bow and arrow and shoots love into people's hearts. But in my family, we know it is one, very small, not particularly attractive, who has the power to change the world. And that power is love. And that is a story that my father told me when I was just a child. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was just absolutely fabulous. A perfect story for a February ending. And did you say the story is in your family? Is that how you get to know the story?
I heard the story from my father, who is part Cherokee and part Choctaw, and part Scots-Irish and part German, and as well as Black Appalachian. And he told it to me when I was a child, and I didn't know the depth of meaning that was in it. I didn't know that it was in the book by James Mooney until I was much older and doing research on stories.
Okay, all right. While you talk to everybody, maybe later on you can put the name of the book in the chat so those who wish to can go back to it and have a look. And it's up to you.
Sure.
If you want to lead the conversation, it's up to you now.
Well, as I said, there are diverse ways to tell the same story. As Momo was saying, she did a lot of research on the stories of Mother Hulda. And so she has stories that are not like the Brothers Grimm version. I have stories that are not like the ones in James Mooney's book. And so do many others. Consider that when you're doing research on your own stories or talking to the storytellers in your family, there may be many ways to tell the same story, and there's nothing wrong with that. You cannot copyright a folk tale, and it lives because it changes with the people who hear it and share it. But I wondered, did anyone connect with this story or a character in the story in some way? Myra?
I could relate to that very much. And Lynn, thank you for finally providing me with a reason why I like moles. Because most of my friends, they have gardens and they just hate them and think of ways how to kill them. And I always like these little mole hills, they're never discouraged. They don't mind the season. And I think I have an image in my mind of a mole with wings and bow and arrow that I won't get out of my head anymore. And I love the way you told the story, and it shows that it has a long family tradition because you tell it in a way that I completely forgot. Well, this is a folk tale, that's a fairy tale, nothing true about it, of course, but you're telling it in a way you've been present, you've heard, you're living it. It creates a different kind of truth, which is very wonderful in storytelling, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. Yes, when I tell a story, I can see my father. I can hear his voice. And it's that way with most of the folk tales that I tell, because most of them began with me listening, as we put it, knee to knee with one of the elders or storytellers in the family. I'm so glad you could connect with Mole, though. They aren't particularly attractive, but the fact that this is the one who has the power of love, to me, seems so important.
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right?
That's right. And they say love is blind, and so is Mole, so it works. Yes. Shalini?
Hi, Lynn. Good evening from Mumbai, and thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful, heartwarming story. And I was all smiles throughout because, in a way, the folktale holds true for me. I've had the good fortune of being, of playing Cupid to two beautiful couples, and the most unexpected way in which their love story unfolded. And so I just started smiling because I was like, hey, what Mr. Mole holds the power of true love. And look at him. I just like Moira said, I could totally imagine him like Cupid with the wings, with the bow and arrow. And I identified with him in so many ways. So thank you so much for that wonderful story. And yeah, it's forever going to be unforgettable. I don't think I'm ever going to forget this story ever. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, I have never been able to relate to Cupid, because why would you want someone to shoot you with arrows to fall in love? I mean, I was one of those curious children always, and that just didn't make sense to me. Why would I want somebody to shoot me with an arrow so that I fall in love with someone? I think I was taking it literally at around 5 years old. If someone's pointing an arrow at me with a bow in hand, I'm going to duck. I'm not going to catch love because I'm going to duck. So, I'm sure I got it after a while, but yeah, I could not relate to that image.
I think that's very vivid for me. I'm gonna duck. I'm not gonna catch that arrow. That's way too vivid. I love the way you put it across, Lynn.
Yes, yeah. Did people feel there was a lesson? Did anyone find a lesson in this story? And please let me know when my time is up. I don't want to.
Sure, you can go ahead. No worries. Yeah, I'll keep a track on that.
Okay.
I like very much that it's not on it seemed to be like a love story, like a romance love story, but because you took it on, and it was something about the quality of love, like the quality of love being, and it was more about how do we like heal on a bigger scale, and what's the energy to heal through love, and that shows in the mold. So I like this very much, that it wasn't only about romance love for me.
Yes. And Shalini, did you have your hand up?
Those who are, yes, Lynn, sorry if I may, those who are rejected usually understand the true meaning and the depth of love. Those who don't receive it usually are the biggest givers. And that somehow came across so beautifully in your story, in that folk tale, because, I mean, it was so easy for the council to say, well, I mean, the mole really doesn't have a role to play, but, and then going forward for them to say that, that was something I was rather curious about, even from our discussions, to know that we will still not have you in our council because this power that you have is dangerous. So I don't know, Ellen, if you could just kind of share your thoughts on that.
Keeping in mind that every animal in the council circle had some power that had been shown. It was recognized. People knew it. Mole was the only one who didn't seem to be showing any kind of power. And so they felt he just didn't belong because he didn't have any kind of power, or magic, some might say. But when they realized it, he could have changed all of them. He could have transformed them from perhaps their powerful selves to creatures of love who perhaps didn't use their powers. And so there was a jealousy. My father always used the word jealousy. They were jealous of him. If you think about it, someone who could make everyone love, why wouldn't you want that? At the same time, if you're someone who wants power, the power of love is going to take away from you that need. So that's my take on it, Shalini. And Selena, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to say that, especially for children hearing the story, forget the love aspect, but just in terms of when you're not accepted into the classroom or into the group, it doesn't mean that you won't go on to have your own greatness. And I think that's an important message, that we often feel that we don't fit in, and yet we can do great things. So to me, that's what I sort of feel very strongly about in the story. It was beautifully told, but I think that it's such an important thing that you don't have to be part of the group to do great things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you.
To add to what Shalini was saying, the fact that the other animals were very clear that yet we would not have you with us, we would still, abandon you, that kind of didn't sit well with me at all. It felt so unfair. But when you explain it saying love is very dangerous, it's very powerful in that sense, then it kind of makes sense. Yeah. Very insecure animals to do something like that.
Yes. Leaders couldn't be the most powerful. If they loved, then they would be sharing their gifts with others. So someone who wants to be dominant is going to lose that dominance once they're sharing love with everyone. People who have their own agendas would have to give up some of that agenda to love. So this is a power. I'm hoping that we all have that power of love in us that can change the world. But I can see the other animals, because this is a folk tale, I can see them being so jealous that they would not want that power in their council circle. If they couldn't have it, they wouldn't want it.
And Lynn,
yes,
I think this story is relevant today, because in this divisive world, there are so many who are afraid of the power of love, and they're trying to spread hate. So
yes,
I mean, it resonates with me from that aspect too.
absolutely, yes.
It reflects the political situation across the world. Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. Well, I hope I gave you something that you could enjoy and carry with you as a gift from my family to you and your families. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for having me here.
You sure did, Lynn. Thank you so much for sharing a part of your tradition, a part of your family, a part of your story with all of us. Really appreciate that. Now we move on to our next teller. We have a very young looking teller from USA, Baltimore. We have Rishi Nixon sharing a story, an episode from the Mahabharata. Is that right, Rishi?
It's from one of the Puranas. It's the original ocean churning myth, but
Okay, the
yes.
churning of the ocean. Yes, okay. Welcome, Rishi, to Chennai Storytelling Festival. Is this your first time with us?
Yes, this is.
Oh, lovely. Looking forward to your debut performance. Tell a little bit about yourself and take it away.
Sure. So, can you hear me all right? Okay. I've been telling stories professionally for 10 years now. This is my 10th year. And I tell a lot of stories from India because that's where my family is from. Um, and I was always really interested in Indian folklore, Hindu folklore, and I studied Sanskrit for 4 years from the Sanskrit Bharati USA Foundation to the advanced level. And in a lot of our uh, instruction, we translated some of these old folk tales into English. We worked on adapting them, um, poetry, myths, and all of that. And I wrote down something that you said, Lynn, that folk tales, they live with the people who change them and share them. And the reason that they stick with us in our culture and in our cultural DNA is because we adapt them to something new that even though I have read like these original texts, I always really like to add in something entertaining that I think kids today would enjoy, or that as a student of science that I find adds some really interesting texture to the story. So yeah, so that's a little bit about what I tell. And so the story that I'm telling you today is one of those stories, the ocean churning, and I've kept it faithful to a lot of the original documents, saying how the story goes forward, but I've also added a little bit of, some of my own masala. So yeah, that's what I'll tell for you today. Once upon a time, before the sun and the moon, the king of the gods, Indra, was riding his divine elephant across the heavens. And as he was on his elephant going past, he saw the great sage Durvasa walking past him the other way. And Durvasa, if you must know, was the most powerful of the sages. So powerful, after millennia of penances, he had the power to make even the gods afraid of him. And the king of the gods, Indra, had to admit to himself he was actually a little afraid of him. But of course, today, he had no reason to be afraid of Durvasa, for he was positively bouncing past him, holding a garland of beautiful flowers that it seemed that Durvasa had made all by himself. And so Durvasa was equally pleased to see Indra, and he beamed and he said, "Aha, just who I've been looking for. Who better to be worthy of this wonderful, wonderful garland that I've made today than the king of the gods himself?" And Indra was so pleased, for Durvasa, if you knew his temper, you knew that once he made a curse, he never took it back. And so Indra was quite glad that Durvasa had no reason to curse him today. And so he grasped the garland, and Durvasa said, "It has the most beautiful fragrance. Please take it in." And so Indra held the garland and he took in a great whiff of it. And yes, I, I'm sure I've never smelled anything that smelled quite like that. Certainly a very unique fragrance. And as he was about to give the garland, back to Durvasa, Durvasa said, "No, no, will you not wear it? It is my gift to you." Oh, oh, you would like me to wear the garland? Well, I shall, you shall wear the garland. I will do even better than that. I shall, how could I be so selfish to keep such a magnificent garland to myself? In fact, I shall bestow it upon my divine companion, the god of the elephants, actually. And so the elephant he was riding, of course, he put the garland around its big ears and fastened it around its neck. He got back on, and from over there, the garland didn't smell quite as bad. And Durvasa seemed to be very happy with this arrangement. And he said, this is the god of the elephants. This is my steed, and I ride him everywhere. And on the masses shall enjoy this beautiful garland around his neck. And in there started falling backwards for the great elephant. Well, I guess this is a good time to tell you a fun fact. I study biology, and in biology, we know that elephants have 2,000 scent receptor genes in their great trunks, and it's actually the most of any mammal, and more than 5 times more than us humans have. And the god of the elephants, whom was Indra's great steed, well, he was a very special elephant. The second fun fact of the day is the elephant Airavata, who is known to be Indra's great steed, has 7 great trunks times 2,000 scent receptors and 4 tusks. And for the poor creature, it was too much to bear. And so Indra starts falling backwards as the great elephant uses its 7 trunks to extricate this awful, hateful smelling garland from its neck and casts it to the ground and takes its great legs and smashes it and mashes it and mashes it into a pulp. And Durvasa, the great sage who had been bouncing only moments before, began turning redder and redder and redder. And as Indra regained his balance, "This accursed creature," Durvasa screamed, "where on earth did you find it? How dare it disrespect my garland so brutally?" Well, Indra said, Indra, I mean, being king of the gods meant being an administrator, and he knew in a moment like this there was nothing better than to just come out with it, get in front of it, and tell the truth. Well, I'm sure he meant no disrespect to you, great sage Durvasa. It's just that the garland, well, it stunk. It really did. And imagine the prospect, as you know, my elephant, he's immortal, and the prospect of wearing that garland and smelling that garland for all of eternity was probably really traumatizing to him. I hope you can understand. But Durvasa did not understand because the red was now turning to purple. And he was apoplectic with rage. And he said, "You gods and your immortality, let's see how much you enjoy faring without it." And he snapped his fingers, and Indra and all of the gods at that very moment could feel their immortality seeping out from them. And he said, "And this accursed, abnormal looking elephant with its 7 trunks and its 4 tusks, no." And he snapped his fingers, and Indra fell to the ground as the elephant disappeared. "I have banished it to the cosmic ocean of milk." Well, Indra knew that once the great sage Durvasa made a curse, he never took it back. And this was bad for the gods because as they felt their immortality leave them, and as they became vulnerable and unable to use the powers which would have destroyed a mortal form, well, they began losing control of the 3 worlds, and the demons became ascendant, and it came to a point where they realized that within months it would be a final stand within the heavenly realm. And so Indra sought the advice of the great protector god Vishnu, and they discussed what on earth were they to do. Well, Vishnu knew many things, and one of the things that he knew was it was rumored, and a rumor as old as time, that deep within the cosmic ocean of milk lay a simple clay pot containing the nectar of immortality. But retrieving it from the thick cosmic ocean of milk was no easy task. Vishnu estimated it would take a team of the most powerful gods over 100 years with their full powers. But they did not have their full powers. And they realized that abandoning all of their arms right now and turning this cosmic ocean of milk for 100 years would leave them greatly vulnerable to an attack by the demons. But they began to have an idea, because who had never experienced immortality? The demons. So what if? What if? And so Indra and Vishnu approached the demon king with a deal. They would make a truce for 100 years, and the demons and the gods would work together to churn the cosmic ocean of the milk and return the nectar of immortality. And once it had been retrieved, they would share it among themselves. And the demons agreed, for even if they defeated the gods and conquered the three worlds, they would never know immortality. Well, so two logistical problems with this situation. Well, the first thing is the cosmic ocean of the milk is huge, and so they needed a churning rod of equally cosmic proportions. So the gods and the demons, they used their powers together, and they uprooted the great mountain Mandara, and they slid its summit first into the cosmic ocean of the milk. Well, once they tried using their powers to turn the mountain, they realized it was far too thick at the bottom for any force to be able to turn it. So they realized they needed something to churn it. And Indra and Vishnu, they got to thinking, and Indra remembered his old buddy, the king of the serpents, and he approached him one day and he said, well, what we've been trying to do, it's been going great. We've had a year without any issues between the gods and the demons. We have the mountain. It's now been slid into the cosmic ocean, but we've realized our powers just won't turn it. Yes, the Serpent King slithered. Well, so, we need something to get that mountain to turn, because then only we could start churning. And so Vishnu and I were talking, Vishnu, and he was like, maybe if this thing that we're looking for to turn it needs to be something extraordinarily powerful, of course. What if it's not a something, but a someone? And the Serpent King said, I'm really not following where you're going with this, Indra. Well, so we were thinking, what if the great, powerful Serpent King wrapped himself around the mountain Mandara, and the gods were at one end and the demons were at the other end, and they pulled back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for 100 years, and we churned the cosmic ocean of milk. And the Serpent King said, what kind of magic mushrooms are you on? Well, Indra begged and pleaded and told the story of his beloved elephant who was trapped inside the cosmic ocean of the milk. And perhaps more salient to the Serpent King, he promised that once they retrieved the nectar of immortality, they would share it with him. Well, what Serpent King can turn down eternal rule? So he agreed, and they turned back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for 100 years. And treasures that had never been seen before started emerging from the cosmic ocean of milk. Seeds of the most precious and rare flowers, gems that with luster that had never been seen in the three worlds. The creature that first emerged, Ujjayi Shravas, was a seven-headed horse. Just like the king of the serpents and the god of the elephants, it became the steed of the demon king. The sun and the moon themselves emerged. Varuni, the goddess of wine, emerged. And soon the gods and the demons, registering these treasures, began skirmishing over which sides would hold them. And well, Varuni, it was clear, was welcomed heartily by the demons, and the gods really did not need that much wine. And Uchaihi Shravas, of course, went to the demon king. The tree of wishes came out and was planted in Indra's central garden. And then the most precious treasure of all emerged, the goddess of fortune herself, Lakshmi. And so the gods and the demons, they fought over who would have the goddess of fortune. And while they were fighting with each other, Lakshmi said, "How dare you? How dare you presume to decide who must have me?" Lakshmi was an independent woman. Lakshmi said, "I choose the gods." And both the gods and the demons knew that nobody would have the power to debate her decision. Well, Indra was reunited with his beloved elephant, and soon there was a sense of unease, for all of these treasures and treasures and treasures kept emerging, and no one, what happened to all of the fearsome monsters and evil spirits that everyone were always snapping their fingers and banishing straight into the cosmic ocean of the milk? Well, the gods and the demons got their answer when the cosmic ocean of the milk started turning this nasty shade of dark blue, and this great cloud of gas emerged. And the gods and the demons both recognized that if unchecked, this cloud of gas would consume all of the three worlds. And so the destroyer god Shiva stepped forward. And in a single gulp, he swallowed the poison, which was later became known as the hala hala. And the poison, it was the condensation for millennia and millennia of all of those evil spirits and fearsome monsters into this one terrible gas. And all of the gods surrounded him as this essence. His darkness was so great, he could swallow it in a single gulp, but it began eating away at his mortal form. And his wife, Parvati, the goddess of power, acted quickly. And in a snap, she placed an enchantment on his throat to lock the poison there. And ever since then, the blue poison has colored his neck, and Shiva has been known as Nilakantha, or the blue-necked one. Well, in all of this chaos about what would happen to Shiva, and the gas and the gods were surrounding him, the demons realized that great poison was the last barrier to the nectar of immortality. And they saw the simple clay pot floating towards them. And in an instant, with deadly silence, they grabbed the pot and they opened the portal back to the underworld. And as the final demon slipped through it, but one god noticed, Vishnu. And so Vishnu morphed instantly into his female form, Mohini, the goddess of enchantment. And Mohini, Vishnu's female form, followed them into the underworld. And as they all rushed into the palace of the demon king to partake in the nectar, Mohini walked in straight behind them. And Mohini, the goddess of enchantment, began to sing. And the demon court was spellbound, for she sung of the comfort of the shores of the cosmic ocean of milk, of the cosmic balance of good and evil, of the nectar of immortality. And she walked over to the demon king himself and scooped the simple clay pot out of his arms. And the demon court and the demon king himself felt only right that this pot belonged to her. And she invited them. She continued to sing. She invited them to the shores of the cosmic ocean of milk, to stand side by side with the gods and share in the nectar together. And she promised that Mohini, a fair arbiter, would decide the gods and the demons' equal shares of the nectar. And so they had no choice but to listen to her. And the gods and the demons lined up on either side of the cosmic ocean of milk. And Mohini began to pour. And she poured into the gods' cups with every intention to follow through on her vow to make both the gods and demons immortal in equal proportion. But as she turned around to the other side and took the pot to pour into the demon's cups, she realized the power that she held. And almost on an impulse, she used a simple enchantment to turn the clay pot into a pot of palm wine. And a moment later, the gods and the demons were drinking. And the gods, they felt their immortality rush back into them as they drank. And the demons were pleasantly surprised how much the nectar of immortality tasted like palm wine. Thank you.
Wow, Rishi, excellent. So much put into one story and so vividly told. We could really watch the entire movie. Thank you so much. That was really vivid. Yes, opening it up to you, to the audience. Any thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Yes. So it's a little bit of a challenge in this story with so many characters and so many complicated names. And I actually had to look back at my notes for Ujjayi Shravas. And so I wanted to ask, it's a story of many characters. The first question that I wanted to ask is, who is the story mainly about for you? Is it a story about Mohini? Is it a story about Indra's love? Is it a story about Vishnu? Is it a story about the gods and the demons working together? Who is it a story about for you? So,
Rishi, for me, the story is about you, young man. You are simply marvelous. Held me spellbound, and I consider myself. I tell mostly stories from Indian mythology, and I know the story of Mohini and the churning of the ocean, but never have I listened to a story so well recounted. Fabulous. I want to ask you a question. Where did you hear this story, and which part of the world are you from?
so I was born in Maryland, but both of my parents are from India, and they are from Kerala, the southern part. And so actually we are not Hindu, we are Christian, but we have so many Hindu friends, and I was homeschooled actually. So in our homeschooling community, we have a lot, well, a couple of Hare Krishna families near us. So it was through them that I started learning Sanskrit and participating in their um, instruction on these folk tales and ancient stories. And so I must have heard the second part of the story just about the ocean churning and what came out of it from my Sanskrit classes and their sessions. But I started researching more into it, and the part at the beginning about the elephant was so funny to me because of how little sense it made that the god's immortality is taken away over just this seven-trunked elephant that stomped on the garland. But I thought it was, a good representation of like power. Like it's not always very logical, as we're learning right now in the United States, what the person in power really doesn't like. So, yeah.
Thank you, and God bless. Fabulous.
Alistair has his hand up.
Rishi, I couldn't help wondering what happened to the poor elephant. Did they not rescue him?
Oh no, they did rescue him. Yes. He came out right before Lakshmi, and so I kind of rushed past that right after Lakshmi came out and between when he came out and the poison, because the poison was so dramatic. But yeah, they were reunited, and the Demon King got his own elephant, his horse, seven-headed horse. I just imagine he cherished equally as
Thank you. I'm relieved to hear it.
Yes, I think there were so many things coming out of the ocean, Alistair. You probably missed that, but he did mention that. And you did speak about the horse with the seven heads as well for the demon. Yes, Michael, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Rishi, I'm curious, with all that great cast of characters, is there one that particularly appeals to you?
Um, of course, I love Mohini and Lakshmi for being an independent woman, but I think the character that stands out to me the most is the Serpent King. And if you'll notice, I didn't I didn't say he got any nectar, and I didn't bring him up at all. Because and even though they were promised, I said, Mohini split the nectar equally into two pieces, or her intention was to do that. Because the Serpent King really was forgotten in the story afterwards. And the myth was that the reason serpents have forked tongues is because the Serpent King was so desperate after having been pulled back and forth for 100 years and not even gotten any nectar, that when they had cast away the final pot, whatever remaining nectar, the drops fell on these very sharp grasses. And so the serpent used its tongue to try to lick the grasses, but the grasses were sharp and um, cut its tongue into two, and obviously couldn't lick the nectar off the grasses. So not immortal, but all serpents have forked tongues as a result. And I think that's a good metaphor for how, you can put a lot into something, but the two, or I guess how even with like the people who are working in our government or executing the things in our country, the two sides that are pulling back and forth can just use them, and then once it's all over and the rewards are to be reaped, they can be cast aside. So I see a lot of metaphors in that. So that's why I'm remembering the serpent in this story at this particular moment.
Excellent. Yes, a very apt metaphor there. Thanks for pointing that out, Vishy. And as somebody else has mentioned in the chat, I love the humor and the irony that you brought into the entire telling. Very, very vivid. I have never enjoyed a mythological story in my life the way I have today. So, thanks to you, I'm going to start listening to Indian mythology now, I think, finally. Thanks for putting that thought into me. Thanks a lot, Rishi. I'm afraid we'll have to move on to our next teller now. We have Michael Williams joining us from Hamilton, Canada today. Welcome to Chennai Storytelling Festival, Michael. Please unmute yourself. Tell us a little about yourself, your work, and share your story with us.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And it may just take me a few moments to come back from that other world that Rishi so beautifully created for us. I now live in Hamilton, Canada, and this is where I was born. But my storytelling persona, as it were, was born in Scotland, where I lived for 30 years and was introduced to storytelling. So I've been telling stories now and working with people's stories for more than 20 years. I started out as an academic, and I was a teacher, but just a little over 20 years ago, I exchanged the classroom to become a traveling storyteller. And that's a story in itself, but that's not the story I'll be telling today. My grandparents, my grandfather in particularly was a storyteller. He and his brothers were musicians. They were jazz musicians. So as you can imagine, I heard lots and lots of stories and tall tales from them. As a young man, in high school, I wanted to be a writer. And had the good fortune of having one of those English teachers who encouraged me to become a writer. But I was raised in a very working class family without a lot of money. And when I told my dad I wanted to be a writer, he was just aghast. He wanted me to work in the local steel mills, where he thought I would, get a job for life and be taken care of by the company. And so I turned to one of my teachers, whose reference I needed to go to university to become a writer. And when I told him my ambitions, he likewise squashed that idea, thinking he called it Mickey Mouse nonsense, and said I should do something useful in the world. And so I became a social worker. And I worked with young people and their families as a counselor. And in a way, it was a different kind of storytelling. And I heard lots of stories from young people. And then really went on from there to eventually become an academic, to become an English teacher. So I surrounded myself with stories, the world of stories and storytelling. And eventually, in Scotland, I was introduced to the Scottish Storytelling Centre and a whole cast of storytellers, and then was eventually gave up the classroom to become a storyteller. And this is a story that I want to share with you that I heard from a Scottish storyteller. And I want to emphasize I heard this story. I've never come across a written version of the story. Um, the whole story is based on my memory of what I heard probably on a day about 25 years ago from a storyteller. And I tried to remember it, and I would start telling kind of a very short version of it, and gradually I added more to it. And I think you'll hear when I begin the story. I suspect that the story, well, I'm almost absolutely certain that the story is of Inuit origin. I wrote a while back, I wrote to an Inuit council in northern Canada, and they weren't familiar with the story, so I didn't really get anywhere with that. I did some more research, and I found the name of my character in a dictionary that had been compiled by Danish missionaries in Greenland back in the 19th century. And I found the name not used as a proper name, though, but used as a noun. And I can say something about that after the story. This story takes place in the land of ice and snow, a place where the northern lights shimmer across the sky for months at a time, and where the sun disappears for months at a time. Now, I want you to imagine the seashore. On the lower slopes of a mountain, there's a cluster of stone huts huddled against the wind. And in one of them, we can picture an oil lamp flickering. And suddenly, if we listen carefully, we hear a baby's cry, a newborn baby. His parents name him Kamenik. And I invite you just to say that name, to feel it on your tongue, Kamenik, because it's not a familiar name to certainly most of us here in the West. Kamenik. His parents are proud to have a son. His father dreams of the day that he will take his boy onto the sea to hunt for seal and whale. But for now, his mother nurses him close, keeping him warm beneath her furs. Now, Kamenik grows into a timid child. When the dogs howl at night, he buries himself in the blankets. When the gulls screech overhead, he hides beneath his mother's sealskin leggings. And when the wind rises, he whimpers in the corner of the hut. Oh, there is something strange about that boy, whisper the adults. The children tease him. They come up with this little chant. Poor little Kamenik, you don't grow so quick. We are very tall, while you stay very small. You see, without encouragement, Kamenik's growth is stunted. By his 15th birthday, he's no bigger than he was when he was 5. His father will not take him hunting. Oh, you're too small, Kamenik. What use are you to me? And Kamenik watches the other men paddle away in their kayaks with their sons. And the children sing their cruel song once more. Poor little Kamenik, you don't grow so quick. Even Kamenik's loving mother wonders what will become of him. One day, with great sorrow in her voice, she tells him it might be best if he leaves. She gives him a small bag of food, and Kamenik paddles out to sea in his kayak. He turns to wave, but his mother has already turned away. For 3 days and 3 nights, Kamenik drifts over the sea in his kayak. Icebergs loom like mountains around him. Gulls cry overhead, and hunger gnaws at him. Just as hope begins to fade, Kamenik sees an island just rising above the sea. And thinking he'll find food and water there, he paddles towards it and beaches his kayak, and he gets out to begin to look around when the ground beneath his feet trembles. The island rises up on 2 immense legs. Oh, it's no island. It's a giant. Terrified, Kamenik flattens himself down in his kayak, and the giant's hand reaches down and lifts the kayak up gently. And peering in, oh, look, it's a little boy. My wife will be pleased. And the giant wraps Kamenik in his kayak softly in a cloth, puts it in his pocket, and carries him home. And the giant strides across the ocean, stepping over icebergs and mountains, until finally he comes to his home, where he meets his wife. And he takes out of his pocket that cloth and unwraps it. And his wife bends low, looking, oh, do not be afraid, child. And she offers him pemmican and a little thimble of fresh water. And Kamenik eats and drinks, still trembling. And when they cover him with a tiny fur blanket, they let him rest. What a day he's had. But after a while, when he wakes up, he begins to see kindness in their enormous faces. He learns that these giants have no children of their own, and they treat Kamenik as one of their own. The giant father teaches Kamenik how to hunt and fish, and how to mend nets and paddle strong against the sea current. And the giant mother, well, she teaches him to cook, to sew, and to stretch skins. And something remarkable happens. Kamenik begins to grow. Day by day, month by month, Kamenik grows taller and stronger, and his fear begins to fade. And within a year, Kamenik stands as tall as the giants, broad-shouldered and confident. One evening, while they're sitting having a meal, the giant mother notices sadness in Kamenik's eyes. Ah, Kamenik, you are thinking of your first home, aren't you? You miss them. Yes, Kamenik says. I would like to visit them again, but I will return to you. The giant father and mother smile. They understand. And they build him a great kayak. The father, he carves a mighty paddle from a tall pine tree. And his mother prepares food for the journey and gifts for his people. They embrace him and watch from the shore as Kamenik sets off in his kayak. Why, this time the sea does not frighten him. The gulls, they cry overhead, and the dark shapes move beneath the water, but Kamenik paddles steadily onward. And it's not long before he sees his village in the distance. But as he approaches, the children cry out, Ah, it's a giant! Run, run! No, 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 no. It's me, Kamenik. Remember? And he reminds them. He sings the song that they used to use to taunt him. Poor little Kamenik, you don't grow so quick. Remember me? The villagers stare and wonder. But it's his mother who steps forward. She recognizes him. Tears fill her eyes, and the village gather around him as he wades ashore. And that night they celebrate Kamenik's return with dancing and listening to Kamenik tell his amazing story. Later, around the fire, the elders speak of sorrow. You see, since Kamenik left them, the fish, the seals, the whales have vanished from the sea. Hunger grips the village. Kamenik's grandfather says that it's Senna's doing. Senna has taken the creatures of the sea. For you see, Senna is the goddess of nature. She controls nature, the weather. Where is she? Kamenik asks. Oh, at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, only a brave, brave warrior could go to her. But who do we have? Kamenik stands. I will go. You, Kamenik? You will go for us? Yes. And at dawn, Kamenik wades into the freezing ocean, and he takes a deep breath, and he dives down. Down and down he goes, swimming into the darkness. Strange shadows circle around him. Fear tightens in his chest, but he does not turn back. No. And soon he comes to the ocean floor, where he discovers by now that he can breathe. Don't ask me how, I'm only human. And Kamenik, as he gets his bearings and he looks about, he sees a great sea wolf sleeping before him. And carefully, he steps over it and moves on. Eventually, he comes to a vast wall stretching endlessly to either side of him. And exhausted, he leans against it. And his weight on the wall, a hidden door opens, and he stumbles through it into a dark corridor. Feeling his way forward in the darkness, he eventually sees a dim light, a glow in a chamber lit by a single oil lamp. And there she sits, Senna, the sea witch, the goddess of nature herself. Oh, her hair is tangled with seaweed. Barnacles crust her face. She is terrible to behold. And then an old man suddenly reaches out and grabs Kamenik's arm. Kamenik, he keeps calm. He says, it's okay, Father. I come in peace. And the old man releases him and motions him forward. Kamenik steps up behind Sedna, and from his pocket he takes a caribou comb, a bone comb, and he gently and very patiently he begins to comb Senna's tangled hair until it's smooth and sleek. And then he reaches down to the ocean floor and he picks up a sponge and he begins very carefully to scrub and clean Senna's face until it glows radiant. And when he's finished, she turns to him and smiles. Kamenik, for your kindness, I will release the creatures of the sea. The seals, the whales, the fish, once trapped in her hair, now swim free into the ocean. And Kamenik thanks her and begins his long ascent to the surface. And when he returns to the The people gather at the shore. Believe me, some of them didn't expect to see Kamenik ever again, but they rejoiced at his return. And soon the hunters, they found fish in their nets once again. The sea was alive once more. Kamenik's parents stepped forward. Oh, forgive us. Forgive us, Kamenik. And Kamenik very carefully reaches down and embraces them. And before returning to the land of the giants, Kamenik lifts all the stone huts higher up onto the mountain. Why would you do that? His father asks. And Kamenik laughs. For father, he says, for when I paddle away in my great kayak, the waves might have swamped your village. And so, to this day, in that land of ice and snow, where the northern lights glow, and winter darkness lingers, the people, they tell the story of Kamenik, how a frightened little boy, once mocked and cast away, grew into a giant of a man, not through strength alone, but through courage, kindness, and the power of love. Thank you.
Beautiful, Michael. Such a lovely story of kindness. I think that is what really stands out for me. Yes, if you want to lead a little discussion, I'm afraid we have just a couple of minutes before we move to the next teller.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the things I always hesitate a little bit about sort of analyzing a story right after it's been told, but I'm curious as to maybe what image. Is there a particular image that has kind of stayed in your mind? Because I've told this story many times to children, and I'm always fascinated by the images that stay with them. And so I'm curious, maybe the child in you, what image are you holding on to just now?
If I may go first, I love the way the kayak was folded up in a piece of cloth and carefully put inside a pocket. I don't know why that just stayed with me. That is very
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I really love what it means for him to move all the huts up onto the mountain. It's like saying, now that like my impact on you is now large and I recognize that. And before
Mhm.
it was small and you did not. And I like that he goes back to the Giants, or like that at the end of the story, the Giant is still where he belongs, even though, his original parents
Yeah.
very grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Rishi. I think the story also, speaks to me at many levels. And of course, I've had friends who were adopted, and who there comes a time in their life when they become curious about their birth parents. And so there's part of that story. I think the Giants understanding that because that can be very difficult for adopted parents when the children want to find their birth parents and maybe even create a relationship with them. But I like the sort of the openness of the giant parents and their love and their confidence. They know, that he'll return to them one day. Um, so yeah, there's a lot in this story, and I guess we talked about Lynn, talked about the power of love in her story as well, and this has come up, and this is again the story speaks to me about the power of love and that love can lead us to forgiveness as well. There are lots of reasons why Kamenik might not have wanted to forgive, what his village, what his own parents had done to him. But I think he's grown bigger in many ways, larger than that, and that always touches me that he can overcome. And all of us here, I'm sure, have reasons why we've had things that have happened to us or done to us that were very difficult, and I certainly have. And in fact, I've had to learn to forgive my own parents for some of the sort of my perceived wrongs in the past. And I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad now that before they passed away, I was able to openly forgive my parents, and understand them more just as human beings, not perfect, but then I'm not perfect either, because since then I've made very similar mistakes. So yeah, so this is a story that's always touched me. Any other images before we go?
Yes, Sarah, the one
Sarah.
last one before we wrap it up. Yes.
So I thought that was just a beautiful story, Michael, and you told it so well. I'm also I'm a retired psychiatric social worker, and just wanted to mention that. But and I can't remember exactly what your question was, but it had something to do with uh, getting in touch with your own inner child, or what is your own inner
Mm,
child needing, or something like that.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but but anyway, I was thinking that at this stage in my life, that what I'm realizing your story really speaks to young people for in particular, and getting started, but it also speaks to old folks like me,
Mm,
as I'm developing my hobbies of living history and storytelling, and developing the courage to tell. It is uh, it's helpful to get in touch with the spirit of love and compassion, because I tell for reasons. I want to
mm,
tell for expressing something that needs to be expressed, telling undertold stories from history, stuff like that. So thank you
mhm.
for the story. It was very inspiring, and I'm going to look it up, because I think I'd like to tell it sometime.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Yes, Eric, quickly, we need to jump to the next teller.
Yes. Well, I see Sedna with her hair down there. Uh, but Michael, you are just an excellent communicator.
Mm,
Okay, your internet connection is perfect, but beyond that, you're just very present through
oh,
through
thank
Zoom, and
you.
I'm sure in person also. But you have a
Well,
very strong, powerful presence.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. And I'm sure, like many of you, in the last 7, 8 years, we've all been spending a lot of time on Zoom. So I'm probably on Zoom most days with someone. A lot of my clients are online clients. And I should say I spend probably more time now listening to other people's stories. I do love to tell, and I welcome this opportunity. But my work has really involved more in working with a lot of older people, and gathering their stories. And I help people write memoirs or legacy projects to capture their stories before they pass away. Because once we're gone, our stories are gone. And one of the things I miss about my grandparents is that I didn't record their stories or write them down or ask them to write them down. I remember bits of them, but when they're gone, they're gone. And I think it's so important. Our stories are our last gift that we can leave the world. So I encourage you to share your stories. If you have children, grandchildren, friends, share them. Leave something behind.
Many years ago, I asked my father's father, my grandfather, if I could record him telling about the stories of his life as a young person in Russia. He got angry at me. He thought I was
Mhm.
making fun of him because he didn't think it was worth the recording. But I ended up writing down all the stories anyway.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.
Good for you, Eric. Thanks, Michael. Glad that you chose to share the story with us today. Moving on to our next teller, we have Howard Lieberman sharing a story from USA. Howard shares personal tales and a very strong teller. I'm looking forward to your telling, Howard. Please take it away.
Well, good morning from Minnesota in the United States. Good evening to you in India. My internet connection, which is normally rock solid, seems to be wavering this morning. If can you hear me okay?
Yes, so far so good.
Yes, we can.
Okay, you can. Okay, well then I won't worry about whether I can hear me then. My name again is Howard Lieberman. I live in the United States. I live in the state of Minnesota, which is somewhere right in the middle of the country. And Northern Minnesota touches Canada, and it's generally a very cold place, and in the winter, and in the summer it's a very hot place. And in the summer, we're plagued by mosquitoes, and in the winter, we're plagued by frostbite. And why I live here is sometimes a question my wife asks me. But in any event, the story I was going to tell was is a heartwarming story about a father and a daughter. But I assume that most of you are aware that things in this country have taken a turn towards a very bleak place. And the love, the heart that I would have to brought to that story is a little bit tarnished right now. And I'm going to tell a different story. Eric, I hope this isn't a problem for you, but I'm going to tell the story I'm telling. A couple of things. For the people in India, the story takes place in the state of Vermont. Vermont, like Minnesota, is a northern state. It's up near, again, the Canadian border, has strong, sometimes harsh winters, warm, sometimes hot summers, and mosquitoes are a common theme to both of those states. But that's just to situate you geographically. And here's the story. I love dogs. I've always loved dogs. I've traveled all over the country, and I would have been lonely had it not been for the dogs in my life. And I don't mean to sound like a biased person. But I don't like the little dogs. I don't like the little ones that nip at your ankles and yap, 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 yap. They want to sit in your lap when you're eating dinner. I like big dogs. My favorite dogs are Rhodesian Ridgebacks. Now, Ridgebacks are 85 to 120 pound dogs with short hair. And the hair on their back grows in the opposite direction. It looks like they have a big cowlick, which you'll have to use your imagination on my head. They were bred to hunt lions in a country that was once called Rhodesia. Now, they didn't kill lions, but they were very fast, and they would hunt in packs, and they would tree lions. And what's really good about Rhodesian Ridgebacks is they're very loyal. They're very, very loyal to the people who love them, and they give that love back, but differently from some other dogs. You know, you can take a certain type of dog and they sit up when you tell them to sit up. They sit down when you tell them to sit down. They give you their paw if you ask them to give you their paw, because they're good dogs. Now, Rhodesian Ridgebacks, because they hunt in packs, they're independent dogs. And when you ask a Rhodesian Ridgeback to give you his or her paw, they look at you. Why should I give you my paw? Why should I give you my paw? Well, okay, that person feeds me. So, okay, I'll give him my paw, but I don't have to do that. And so they can be difficult sometimes, but they're very protective. There was one day, I'm just sitting down on a stoop in Boston with my Ridgeback, whose name, by the way, was Soba. Now, if you don't speak Japanese, you may not know that Soba means wet noodle. So I have about a 90-pound dog with the hair on its back growing the opposite direction, whose name is Wet Noodle. And I'm sitting there just probably like I'm doing now with a cup of coffee. And three big burly men walk by. A very American type of man with the t-shirt too tight and the big muscles, which I've never suffered from, sort of straining the t-shirt with this dark look, kind of one guy's shadow boxing. And I'm a smart person, both this way, but I'm also what's called a smart aleck. Sometimes my mouth opens and words come out. And I don't think they were the right words at that exact moment. But when this big, muscly person was showing off for his buddies, I looked up and said, "Hey, who's winning the fight?" And he stopped and he looked at me. "What did you say?" I said, "Well, you look like you're boxing. Who's winning the fight?" And he starts to walk towards me. By the way, I was skinny, had a little bit of a beard and a ponytail, but you'll have to use your imagination for that part. And as he gets about 3 feet away from me, Soba, my Rhodesian Ridgeback, stands up, bares her teeth, and growls. And the big man said to me, "Can you control that dog?" Well, I've already told you that Ridgebacks are independent. And I looked at him and I said, "No, I really can't. She has her own mind." He backed away. Soba sat back down. And life went on. Well, at one point, I moved to Vermont. I'm living in a cabin on the edge of the woods. Now, this is a big deal for me because I'm a city kid. I grew up in Chicago. Not as large a city as New York, where Eric grew up, but I grew up in Chicago. I didn't really know the countryside, but I determined to learn about the countryside. And I'm living in a cabin in Vermont on the edge of the woods with my Rhodesian Ridgeback, Soba. Soba went everywhere with me. I would hike in the woods at night, during the day, but I always felt okay because I had Soba with me. I had Soba, and I knew that I could be safe. And at night, when I got back to the cabin, I would get into my bed. I would lie in the middle of the bed. You know how you get in bed, you like to prop up the pillows and lie there in a way that makes you comfortable? Well, Soba would get in bed with me. And that's okay. She's my dog. I love her. But every now and then, she would nudge me over. My 85-pound Rhodesian Ridgeback would nudge me over, push me towards the other side of the bed. In the morning, I would find myself lying in the corner of the bed with no pillows propped under my head. Soba would be lying in bed on her back on my pillows, like with her legs up, just looking around like life is grand. But that was okay because Soba was my friend. But you know what happens with all things that live? Soba died. Soba died. And I always was told, don't forget the people who you love. They stay with you. Well, I need to tell you that I don't always believe those things. I've lost a lot of people in my life. And every now and then I would want one of those people to somehow reach out to me and lead me in a direction towards home. But that never happened. Not with the people I lost. Even after Soba was gone, I would walk into the woods at night. I I was careful to remember where I'm going so I can find my way home. I learned to be brave. I learned to think not just with my head, but also with my heart. Well, one night, I'm sitting in my cabin, and I walked out to go to the outhouse, which I didn't have indoor plumbing. This was a cabin in Vermont, and the outhouse was up on a hill. I looked and I looked and it was a beautiful night. It was a full moon and the stars were out. And it was cold, but it was crisp and clear. And I went back to the cabin and I grabbed my pad. I'm a writer. And I grabbed my pad. I grabbed a pen. And I went into the woods like I often did, with Soba and alone. I walked, I followed the path I normally took. I could find it because of the moon. And I knew if the northern star was right there, I could always find my way home. I heard the creatures of the night. I saw their eyes in the darkness. And if I tell you that I wasn't afraid, I wouldn't be telling you the truth. Remember, I'm a city kid. I understand what goes on in the night in the city. And I was still learning about the night in the woods. I found a log way out into the woods, and I sat down to write about what it meant for me to be a father, what it meant for me to have been alone, and how I would learn to be a father, how I would learn to love. And I looked up and it was dark out. It was dark out. The moon was gone behind a cloud. The stars were gone. There was no north star in the sky to tell me how to get home. And I began to panic. And I began to cry. Now, I cry a lot. That's not unusual. And when you're in Vermont in the woods at night and you cry, the tears, they freeze on your cheeks. I knew I had to get home. I couldn't spend the night out in the woods, or I might not ever make it back. I started to walk in what I believed was the direction I needed to go. But when I wandered into that direction over there, I felt a nudge against my leg. I didn't know what was nudging me. So I walked away in a different direction from that nudge. And I walked in that direction. And as I walked, and as I sank into the snow, because I wasn't wearing snowshoes, which I guess you don't need in India, I'm walking, and I feel a nudge on my other side. And I look down, and it scares me. And I walk away in a different direction. And this kept on for a long time. Until finally, the clouds began to dissipate, to go away. The stars came out. The North Star came back. And I could see over in the distance the little light that sat outside my outhouse. And I followed that light. until I found my way back to the cabin. And when I opened the door, I said, "Come on in, Soba. Let's go to bed." But Soba wasn't there. Soba wasn't there. I got into bed in my spot with my pillows propped behind my head, lying back, thinking about fatherhood, thinking about the world around me. And I felt a nudge pushing me to the side of the bed. And so I moved over a little bit. In the morning, I woke up hanging off the side of the bed. I wasn't on the pillows. I was barely on the bed. And I remembered something that someone once told me. If you keep the people you lose in your heart, they never really leave you. They stay with you. And when you need them, they will help lead you home out of the darkness. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you so much for that. For taking us into your life and introducing Showa to us. That's really wonderful. Opening it up to the audience. Anybody wants to share any thoughts?
Yes, I miss Soba.
Yeah, I miss Soba. I've had 3 Rhodesian Ridgebacks, Soba, Franny, and Yukiko. And Yukiko is actually Japanese for joy of a cold winter's morning, but she wasn't in this story. And I'm a hard person. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I know Selena knows a little bit about me. Eric knows a little bit about me. And I don't know if you're hearing anything because my internet is, for the first time in a long time, really unstable.
No, we can hear you clearly. It's perfectly fine, Howard. Working well.
Okay. I'm a tough guy sometimes. And I'm sure I wouldn't want to be married to myself. But my wife has stuck with me for since 1978. And I've had a lot of loss. And I do believe that if you keep those that you love and you lose in your heart, they are never really gone. And they will take you home if you need them, if you feel them, if you listen for them. They'll take you home out of the darkness. By the way, this is a true story. All my stories are, for better or for worse, true stories, personal experience stories.
Well, what happened that last night there? Was there some other animal or person who nudged you into bed?
Eric, I didn't understand a word of what you said because my internet is.
I'm saying in the story, the last night, you felt that that Soba or somebody was nudging you in bed, but what was it finally?
I don't know. I kept getting pushed over, and maybe it was the memory of Soba. Maybe it was the spirit of Soba. Maybe I'm just neurotic and felt something that wasn't really there. I don't know. And,
no, it was Soba. I've had many dogs over the years and have experienced very similar things with dogs I have lost. It was definitely her.
I'm sorry. I wish I could respond to that. I have no idea what was said. I'm so sorry about I never have a problem with this.
Maybe I'll put that down in chat and you can read about it. Did you get to hear that, Howard?
Yes, I can look in chat. I know that.
Well, Jeff was just saying he's had dogs too, and he's also had the experience of being with a dog even after the dog passed away.
I see that. Yes, I see that. And sometimes when I go walking, so you know that I'm a little bit crazy. I walk every day, and when I walk, the memory of Soba, the memory of Franny, who I have never introduced you to, and the memory of my albino cockatiel are with me when I walk, and they walk with me. I sometimes talk to them, and my albino cockatiel rides on Soba's back as we walk through the neighborhood. It's not that I'm crazy. I feel them though. I feel them with me. And if you've ever loved an animal or person, I've lost a lot of people in my life. Your heart is big. There's room for all who you love and all who you've lost in your heart. And we need to remember that as we go forward in these difficult times. Keep love in your heart, and love is what brings you home out of the darkness. How is my dog's name spelled? Soba is S-O-B-A, which is, but it's really a type of buckwheat noodle that is made into a broth. But I spent a lot of time in my youth, because I was homeless, and I spent time, I was taken to my Japanese family, and they taught me that soba generally means wet noodle. And so anyway, thank you, Soba, I agree. Anyway, I have a lot of very difficult stories to tell, and as the world is evolving right now to what I would consider an unhappy place, I just want to just bring some joy and love, because we need that. And I encourage all of you to reach into your heart for love.
Joy and love, that is something you always bring with your personal stories forward. I still remember your story from last year, and the thoughts were same. Keep the love in your heart and share the joy and love with everybody. Thank you so much for this beautiful personal story yet again. And I think with that, we'll have to wrap up today's session. We've had lots of love, kindness, some oceans, some treasures from the oceans coming out. Lovely, lovely evening. And let's continue with our storytelling and workshops. Over to you, Eric. Thank you so much, everybody, once again for joining in.
Thank you.
Let me just say goodbye to Eric, to whom I actually didn't even say hello. What you bring to the storytelling world every year is breathtaking. And I just want you to know I appreciate everything that you do and how you're bringing story to people all over the world. And it amazes me that you can actually do that and live to tell about it by the end. So
thank you.
You're a wonderful person for that, and thank you.
Thank you. I'm not really doing anything, just hanging out.
You're doing a lot.
Okay, thank you.
You are, Eric, you are.
And thank you, Pratigya, for hosting today so beautifully.
My pleasure.